2 ingredients, combined cost under $1. And together they perform a skin healing process that a $12 billion wound care industry has spent decades trying to convince you requires their products to achieve. A single bottle of castor oil costs $3 and lasts 6 months. A box of baking soda costs $1 and lasts longer than that. What happens when you combine them in the correct ratio and apply them to damaged, inflamed, scarred, or chronically troubled skin is not a trick. It is chemistry. Old chemistry. Chemistry so old it predates every corporation currently selling you an alternative. This combination accelerates the skin's natural repair cycle, reduces inflammation at the cellular level, draws out infection without antibiotics, and rebuilds the moisture barrier over scarred tissue, all without a single synthetic compound, a single patent, or a single prescription. Dermatologists trained after 1980 were never taught this. Not because it doesn't work, because it cannot be owned. And in a $400 billion beauty and pharmaceutical industry, anything that cannot be owned eventually gets buried. Tonight, we dig it up. The global wound care and skincare treatment market is worth $47 billion annually. Add the broader cosmetic dermatology market, acne treatments, scar reduction, anti-inflammatory skincare, and you are looking at a combined industry worth over $400 billion worldwide. Every dollar of that depends on a single assumption, that your skin cannot heal, restore, and regenerate itself without expensive, proprietary synthetic intervention. That assumption is the product. Your belief in it is what they are selling. What was suppressed here was not dangerous. It was not unproven. It was a 2-compound formula, one derived from a plant pressed for centuries across 4 continents, one a simple mineral salt found in the earth that performs virtually the same biological functions as products retailing between $30 and $300. The difference is not chemistry, the difference is ownership. Because neither castor oil nor sodium bicarbonate can be patented, no corporation can build a protected revenue stream around them. And in an industry where R&D investment only makes financial sense if you can own the result, an unownable solution is not an opportunity. It is a threat. So it did not get funded. It did not get published in sponsored journals. It did not get taught in the curricula that pharmaceutical companies quietly influence. It simply got crowded out, not by better science, but by better marketing budgets. We are going to walk through exactly how that happened. But first, you need to understand how old this formula really is. 4,500 years before the first pharmaceutical patent was filed, Egyptian physicians were pressing the seeds of the Ricinus communis plant, what we now call castor, and combining the extracted oil with mineral salt compounds to treat infected wounds, inflamed skin, and lesions that refuse to close. This is not inference. This is documented. The Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical text dating to approximately 1550 BCE, but believed to compile knowledge from as far back as 3000 BCE, contains over 700 medical formulas. Among them, explicit instructions for applying castor oil to skin conditions. The Egyptians called the castor plant kiki. They considered it sacred enough to place vessels of its oil inside burial tombs. Simultaneously, and independently, ancient Indian physicians practicing Ayurvedic medicine were documenting castor oil under the Sanskrit name Aranda. In the Karaka Samhita, one of Ayurveda's foundational texts dated to approximately 600 BCE, castor oil is listed as an anti-inflammatory, a wound-sealing agent, and a treatment for skin inflammation. Ayurvedic practitioners combined Aranda oil with mineral salts, including forms of what we recognize as sodium compounds, to create poultices for infected skin. The combination is described not as experimental, but as foundational, the kind of knowledge passed from teacher to student as settled fact, not hypothesis. In ancient Greece, Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, documented Egyptian castor oil use with some astonishment, noting that the Egyptians burned it for light, but also applied it extensively to the body. Greek physicians adopted it into their own pharmacopoeia. The Hippocratic corpus references oil-based skin treatments for wound management. Move east to ancient Persia and the broader Islamic Golden Age. Al-Qanun fi al-Tib, the canon of medicine written by Ibn Sina in the early 11th century, dedicates a substantial section to what he called kharwa oil, derived from the castor plant. Ibn Sina noted that the oil penetrates the layers of skin more deeply than most oils. Modern chemistry confirms that ricinoleic acid, castor oil's primary fatty acid, has an unusually small molecular structure, allowing deeper dermal penetration than olive oil or coconut oil. Ibn Sina combined it with alkaline mineral salts for infected skin. The canon of medicine was the primary medical textbook in Europe until the 17th century. Every trained physician for 600 years knew about this formula. In West Africa, particularly among the Hausa people of what is now northern Nigeria, the castor plant grows wild and has been harvested for medicinal use for millennia. European colonial medical observers in the 18th century documented Hausa healers applying castor oil mixed with alkaline ash compounds to skin wounds and burns. One British colonial physician, writing in 1762 in a report to the Royal Society of London, described watching a healer treat a severe burn with a castor oil and ash paste, and noted that the wound showed remarkable absence of putrefaction and faster closure than I have observed with our own treatments. He filed the report. The Royal Society noted it, and nothing happened, because there was nothing to sell. Indigenous cultures of the Caribbean and Central America had been using the castor plant in identical ways before European contact. When Spanish colonizers arrived, the more observant among them adopted these practices. Records in the Archivo General de Indias include physician reports from the 1600s describing castor oil used by indigenous healers. In China, records of castor oil's medicinal use date to the Tang dynasty. The Benkao Gangmu, the Compendium of Materia Medica compiled by Li Shizhen in 1596, one of the most comprehensive medical texts in Chinese history, documents castor oil as a primary treatment for skin inflammation and infection. He was describing 400 years ago the same combination we are discussing tonight. Every civilization, every continent, every era before the modern pharmaceutical industry, all of them arrived independently at the same two-part answer: the oil from the castor plant, combined with an alkaline mineral compound, heals skin in ways that nothing else available to them could match. Dr. David Williams, an American biochemist who spent years compiling cross-cultural documentation of castor oil use, published a review in the 1990s arguing that the global consistency of castor oil's application represented among the strongest evidence for genuine efficacy. He was largely ignored by mainstream dermatology. The reason this formula works is not mysterious. The chemistry is settled, peer-reviewed, and sitting in academic databases. Castor oil is approximately 90% ricinoleic acid, a hydroxylated unsaturated fatty acid with the molecular formula C18H3403. This hydroxy group is the key. It is what explains virtually every therapeutic property castor oil demonstrates on skin. First, anti-inflammatory action. Ricinoleic acid has been demonstrated to inhibit prostaglandin E2 synthesis, the same biochemical pathway targeted by ibuprofen and many topical anti-inflammatory pharmaceuticals. This is not a gentle, soothing effect. It is a documented reduction in the inflammatory cascade, the same process that causes redness and swelling. Second, antimicrobial action. Ricinoleic acid demonstrates broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against gram-positive bacteria, including Staphylococcus aureus, as well as several fungal species. Research confirms that ricinoleic acid disrupts microbial cell membranes, inhibiting growth without creating the resistance pathways associated with antibiotic use. Third, deep penetration. Because ricinoleic acid's molecular weight sits at approximately 298 g-mol, it penetrates the skin's surface more effectively than most plant oils. This is not anecdotal. Transdermal absorption studies confirm it. Now, sodium bicarbonate, NaHCO3. When combined with castor oil and applied to skin, it performs two critical functions. It gently dissolves the protein bridges holding dead skin cells together, allowing the surface layer to shed. Second, bicarbonate ions alter the local pH environment around bacterial colonies, disrupting the range they need to thrive. The combination creates a synergistic effect that neither compound achieves alone. Bicarbonate opens the surface, ricinoleic acid penetrates deeper. A 2018 review in the Journal of Advanced Research concluded that ricinoleic acid's profile was comparable to pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory agents, and its safety profile far exceeded synthetic alternatives. The mechanism is clear. The efficacy is documented. What is missing is a patent, and without a patent, there is no funding pipeline. Pharmaceutical companies collectively spend more on marketing than on research and development. The ratio in some years exceeds 2-to-1, twice as many dollars convincing you that a product is necessary as are spent on actual discovery. In the 1950s, castor oil was still a common household remedy. It was sold in pharmacies in plain bottles for pennies. And then, between roughly 1955 and 1975, it essentially vanished from mainstream medical recommendation. Not because new research disproved it, because the emerging pharmaceutical dermatology industry needed to establish proprietary treatments. The suppression was structural. It happened through curriculum. Medical schools, increasingly dependent on pharmaceutical industry funding, oriented their training toward pharmacological intervention. Residency programs taught prescription treatments. Textbooks written by researchers whose labs were funded by pharmaceutical companies did not include chapters on castor oil. The FDA's regulatory framework, designed for synthetic pharmaceutical compounds, made clinical validation of natural, unpatentable substances economically irrational. To run the trials required to make a health claim about castor oil would cost tens of millions of dollars. The economics made suppression automatic, not conspiratorial, automatic. Pharmaceutical companies isolated it, modified its molecular structure just enough to patent it, and sold it back at prescription prices. The parent compound, sitting in a 30 bottle at every pharmacy, was never mentioned. Sodium bicarbonate followed an identical trajectory, gradually replaced by branded antiseptic solutions that cost 40 to 80 times more. The money you have spent on treatments and scar creams over your lifetime is the financial record of this suppression. For the average person, lifetime spending on these categories exceeds $15,000 for a combination of compounds that total under $5 per year. That gap is not science. That gap is a business model. Here it is. The formula that Egyptian physicians packed into tomb jars, that Ibn Sina put in the canon of medicine, that healers across 6 continents used for millennia. Cold-pressed, hexane-free castor oil and plain sodium bicarbonate, available at any grocery store, pharmacy, or health food shop, more effective than most of what you have ever paid for. Here is exactly how to use it, for 4 of the most common skin conditions this formula addresses. What you need: 1 tablespoon cold-pressed castor oil, 1-2 teaspoon baking soda, a small bowl. Step 1. Cleanse. Wash the affected area with plain warm water. Pat dry, leaving skin slightly damp. Step 2. Mix. Combine the castor oil and baking soda in a small bowl. Stir until you have a uniform paste, pale, slightly thick, with a consistency like soft frosting. If too thick, add 1 drop of warm water. Step 3. Apply. Smooth the paste over the affected area. Do not scrub. The baking soda will do its work chemically. Mechanical force is unnecessary and counterproductive on inflamed skin. Step 4. Rest. Leave on for 15 to 20 minutes. The baking soda is mildly alkalizing the surface pH and beginning to disrupt the bacterial environment. The castor oil is penetrating and beginning its anti-inflammatory work. You may feel a very faint warmth. This is normal. Step 5. Remove. Rinse with lukewarm water. Pat dry. Apply a thin finishing layer of plain castor oil, no baking soda, and leave it overnight. Most users report visible reduction in redness within 48 hours. Active cystic lesions typically show reduced swelling within 3 to 5 days. With consistent nightly application, significant improvement in clarity within 3 to 4 weeks. For scars, apply the same paste formula directly to scarred tissue. Massage gently in small circles for 90 seconds. Leave for 20 minutes. Rinse. Follow with a pure castor oil seal overnight. The ricinoleic acid has been shown to support collagen reorganization in scar tissue. Expect measurable results over 6 to 12 weeks. It is a process that would cost $200 to $600 per session at a medical spa. For severely dry or cracked skin, use a gentler ratio, 2 tablespoons castor oil to 1/4 teaspoon baking soda. Apply, leave for 10 minutes, rinse, then apply a generous pure castor oil seal. For severely cracked hands, heels, or elbows, apply the oil seal and cover with cotton socks or gloves overnight. Within 1 week, most users report dramatic improvement. For minor wounds and infection, clean the wound first with plain saline. Apply a thin layer of the castor oil and baking soda paste directly to the wound. Cover with a clean bandage. Change twice daily. This is the closest modern equivalent to what those Hausa healers in 18th century Nigeria were doing, and what outperformed their medical kit. A professional scar reduction course runs $1,200 to $3,600. A 3-month supply of this formula, approximately $4,000. The ricinoleic acid in your $3 bottle of castor oil is the same compound being isolated, patented, and sold back to you at a 10,000% markup inside branded dermatological formulations. This formula is not appropriate for deep wounds requiring medical attention. Always seek professional care for severe infections. Do a patch test before full application, and use cold-pressed, hexane-free castor oil. The solvent-extracted version loses a significant portion of its ricinoleic acid content in processing. In 3000 BCE, an Egyptian physician pressed the seeds of a wild plant, combined the oil with a mineral compound from the earth, and healed skin that wasn't supposed to heal. He didn't know about ricinoleic acid. He just knew it worked. So he wrote it down, and then Ibn Sina read it, confirmed it, and wrote it again. And healers, worldwide, arrived at the same conclusion. And then the 20th century arrived, and the ability to patent a molecule turned medicine from a practice into an industry. And industries don't run on what works, they run on what can be owned. The castor plant cannot be owned. Baking soda cannot be owned. So the 70 years of scientific literature that should have accumulated around them never came. Instead, we got branded derivatives. The knowledge was never lost. It was just made inconvenient to find. You have found it now. If this video gave you something your doctor never did, share it with someone who deserves to know. And the next time you reach for the $40 scar cream, remember the $3 bottle, remember the Egyptian physician, remember what was always there waiting for you.